That's really cool music. I really like that. That's pretty cool. That is pretty damn cool. Hello to everyone who's watching.
Hello,
This is
DOC. Hello to everybody else watching.
episode 12. 12 episodes we've done now.
now. Oh, yeah, it says up there.
Right there.
Yeah. I like that music.
Yeah, it's a little bit loud though. Trying to destroy my eardrums. Here we go.
I just did it too. At the same time as you.
That's better. Unless we want to rave today, which is totally cool. You know, I'm totally down for that. We're going to get the flashing lights and we'll just start raving. It'll be great.
So, you guys all ready to do this Martin Zender? Can you see me doing that when I'm like scrolling there?
Nope. I cannot see you. I can only see you, but I can't see your mouse.
You can see me. You can see me in here. See?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I cannot see your mouse. So if you put out G's, it's good.
Cool. All right. Now, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Let's giggity go.
Can you see that all right to read it?
Yep. I can read it perfectly. So what side do you want me to read? Left or right?
Let's say right.
Okay, I'll read right.
Okay. Right then. Romans part 21 we're up to, Liam. Everyone? For what if some disbelieve? Hang on, wait a second. Okay. For what if some disbelieve? Will not their unbelief nullify the faithfulness of God? May it not be coming to that. Now let God be true, yet every man a liar, even as it is written, that so thou shouldst be justified in thy sayings, and shalt be conquering when thou art being judged. Now if our injustice is commending God's righteousness, what shall we declare? Not that God, who is bringing on indignation, is unjust. As a man am I saying it. May it not be coming to that. How else shall God be judging the world? Yet if the truth of God superabounds in my life for his glory, why am I also still being judged as a sinner? And why not say, according as we're calumniated, that word, and according as some are averring that we are saying that we should be doing evil, that good may be coming, whose judgment is fair. The purpose of asking and answering these questions, besides satisfying our quest for truth, is to settle our hearts and prepare them for the grand announcement of Romans
3:21. The questions I have already answered at length will be touched upon again briefly, or not, for review purposes. Then I'll rev the engines and answer the remaining questions. Question 1, or 1. What then is the prerogative of the Jew? Chapter 3, verse 1. In chapter 2, Paul has just raked Israel all over some hot coals. His assessment of the favored nation knocks them to the canvas. The conclusion could possibly arise. Israel is out for the count. God is done with her. Let's all become preterists and embrace and embrace replacement theology. That is a system of teaching, making the body of Christ God's replacement for Israel, and his excuse for reigning on all of his literal promises concerning the literal descendants of Abraham. Paul answers his own question. What is the prerogative of the Jew? Much in every manner, Romans 3:2. So much for preterism. I think that's how you call it.
Yeah.
Question 2. What if some Jews disbelieve? Will not their unbelief nullify the faithfulness of God? Uh-oh. Some Jews disbelieve. What will God do now? According to Christianity, he lives or dies with the ability or lack thereof of his creatures to give him his proper due. If some disbelieve, then God's hands are tied. See how many people disbelieve? See how many knots God's hands are in? I bet God now wishes he never gave anyone a free will. Once the only sovereign will in the universe, God then gave every single person on earth his or her own sovereign realm. Once a deity like him surrenders absolute sovereignty, There's no getting it back. For what if none of the new sovereignties want to give it back? God's very own creation, therefore, has painted him into a corner of frustration, of frustrated desire. He wills all to be saved, 1 Timothy 2:4. But much of humanity wills otherwise. In the battle of the wills, God wills to save, humanity wills not to be saved.
Human will wins. God is thus eternally foiled. I bet he's kicking a lot of cans now. Maybe he can take up knitting. He needs something to do with the hands that can no longer direct the affairs of humanity. The miracle of unbelief. Forget the aforementioned nonsense. Nothing could be further from the truth. God is operating all in accord with the counsel of his own will. Ephesians 1:11. As far as the human faith needed to believe the evangel of grace, only God can impart it. Romans 12:3. The only way anyone could lack faith, therefore, is if God actively refuses, for the time being, to impart it. To impart faith, God needs only to exhale his spirit upon someone's head or into their heart. Why does he refuse this for so many? Simply, it is not his plan for every member of the human race to believe now. Thus, he actively prevents such a thing. He actively prevents it by purposely withholding it. Withholding such magnificent breath is difficult. I contend that God works harder at holding his breath than releasing it. See how small is the planet and its inhabitants. Compare this to the depth, height, and breadth of God's exaltive powers. Breathing faith upon the world would be for him like blowing out a single birthday candle would be for us, or disrupting an overripe dandelion with a single puff. God could impart faith to the world in his sleep on the exaltation of a single snore. He needs vessels of honor, however, to persecute
the future rulers of the universe. That's us. So why would he now breathe on the vessels of dishonor, when he needs them to be dishonorable? The future glory of vessels of honor require that they share the sufferings of the persecutions of Christ in this life. 2 Corinthians 1:5, Philippians 3:10. As I wrote last week, suffering fits vessels of honor, members of his body, to bring God's grace to the wicked celestial beings. We must teach them without killing them. Killing them would ruin our testimony as ambassadors of grace. Thus, we need patience to deal with them, patience which can only come at present via evil human beings and the opportunities they provide. Future rulers and reigners of the universe, therefore, must suffer persecution at the hands of the unbelievers. To maintain unbelievers is their unbelief. God must purposely crank his head 90 degrees and refuse to breathe his deepest spirit into these individuals. The miracle is not that there are believers in the world, but that there are so many unbelievers. Unbelief is an active miracle sustained minute by God. This active miracle ensures that we members of Christ's body are continually vexed by able persecutors. Lazarus, come forth. Consider Jesus Christ and that dead man, Lazarus. Jesus said he was the life, John 14:6. In other words, life dwelt madly in him and radiated ridiculously from him. So there he is one day outside of the tomb of Lazarus. He calls forth Lazarus from the grave, calls the man by name. Jesus Christ is so able to raise the dead that he has to name the particular dead man he wants out. Lazarus, come forth. Or else every tomb in the world cracks open and preempts the resurrection. The Lord of life must control the power. The effort is not in raising the dead, but in keeping from raising all of the dead. God parts the Red Sea, and we gape in awe. Jesus walks on water. Our chins hit the bottom of the boat in amazement. Why? These things are normal. Glory is normal. God is glory, and his glory fills the universe. How can it not fill it? Yet it is strenuously restrained. The dark side of contrast isn't over yet. It is not yet time for God's glory to fill everything. God needs both vessels of honor and dishonor to fulfill his purposes. In bringing many sons to glory, he skillfully works the contrasts of darkness and light, death and life, sin and salvation, peril and pain, as Jesus said to his disciples in Matthew 13:11. To you has it been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of the heavens, yet to those it has not been given.
There you have it. To those it has not been given. Faith is an active giving by God. You don't work it up yourself. You receive it. The absence of faith is just as active. It's negatively active. That is, it's purposely not happening. That is, it's not happening. Christ encapsulated. Do you realize just how hard it must have been to downgrade the glory of the Christ so that God could stuff him into a tiny human from suitable for bloody propulsion from the uterus of a teenage girl? Don't you think that was hard? Don't you think it would have been easy to dispatch Christ to earth in his natural godlike glory, to bathe the world in that supernal light which Christ is and which God is? Such a feat, not such a feat really, would have been simpler, but no, it fails to suit God's love. It fails to demonstrate the proper contrast. To be appreciated eventually in all its resurrected magnificence, the glory of Christ first must be downgraded, depixelated, then reconstructed into a human-shaped vessel stuck to the wall of Mary's womb. My God, imagine trying to package your entire wardrobe into a carry-on size suitcase. You stuff and roll all of your clothes and you sit on the case and try to zipper it. It's very hard. It's awkward and barely meant to be. Maybe now you can grasp the emptying of Christ and the difficult downgrading of divine power. It is hard for God to downgrade the Son of his right hand, to not give everyone faith now, to not manifest his glory, to not snatch away the body of Christ this minute, and to not remove the spirit of stupor from his favorite nation. Romans 11:8. God gives them a spirit of stupor, speaking of Israel, and therefore to not illumine that nation, making way for Paul and the body of Christ. All of this is harder than bench pressing a bank safe.
Therefore, how can we say that humanity's unbelief will nullify the faithfulness of God, when humanity's unbelief is evidence of the faithfulness of God? Humanity's unbelief subserves God's greater purpose, creating contrast before the Big Bang of glory that will make the millennia of doom and gloom look like the genius stroke of God that it truly is. Verse 4. If our injustice is commending God's righteousness, shall we declare that God, who is bringing on indignation, is unjust? We shall see more in chapter 9 about how God purposely makes unjust people our injustice to backdrop and thus display his righteousness. Is commending God's righteousness. If God purposely makes morally ugly people that way, he didn't make them good and watch them go bad of their own volition or free will. Then how can he be indignant with them? Indignant with them. Isn't that unjust? It might be unjust for a human to do this, but we're not dealing with a human. We're dealing with God. Since all is out of, through, and into God, Romans 11:36, how can anything not be out of him, including evil people? God himself creates evil, Isaiah 45, verse 7. Theologians and other stupid people, I'm going to repeat that. Theologians and other stupid people, Romans 1:22, try to remove I create evil from Isaiah 45:7 from God's resume. Why? They assume eternal torment to be true. Eternal torment, however, is a false teaching, a teaching of demons, 1 Timothy 4:1. Promulgated upon careless people by careless people habitually violating principles of consistent translating. Once we realize that all of God's creation eventually returns to him, Romans 11:36, again. We can then stomach the fact that God temporarily requires vessels of honor to vex, defame, cheat, and persecute his chosen vessels of glory.
Don't you mean dishonor?
Did I? Oh,
Yeah.
well, to vex, defame, cheat, and persecute his chosen vessels of glory. Thank you, Catherine. These honorable vessels must learn to show bad people grace. Only this will prepare them to ably administer the same grace to the bad spirits above. They need wisdom too. Earthly vessels of dishonor must one day be brought to a realization of the truth. They too must learn of the great God of heaven and love him rather than the caricature presented to him by Christendom. God gives these vessels of dishonor, not a single chance to believe in him in this life. He destined them from the beginning to be what they are. They cannot be anything else. Not a chance. Aeonian life is not of chance, and neither is vessel of dishonordom. Vessels of dishonor are chosen to vex the chosen.
Someone may think this unfair of God. This objection can neither silence nor sidetrack the truth. How dare anyone question God in the first place? If eternal torment was true, I could understand the objection to God purposely hardening vessels of dishonor. God would then be responsible for the unending torture of the majority of human creation. But since eternal torment is a lie, we can take a breath and regroup. To ensure that these vessels of dishonor eventually need God and receive Him into their hearts and minds, God visits indignation upon them. Please stop seeing indignation as a wholly negative. It is negative only in the short term. In the long term, God's indignation cures and restores. The indignation of God is righteous. Never forget that we are dealing with a being who does nothing out of spite, frustration, or a desire to punish. God's indignation brings vessels of dishonor to a realization of the truth. Parents become indignant with children, then discipline them to correct them. The motive is love. God's motive cannot be anything but love, because He is love. 1 John 4:8. Remember who we are dealing with. Some people compare God to human beings. This is a bad mistake. He is not a human being. He is the sovereign of the universe. Whenever you see God doing something that seems to you to be distasteful or crass, just remember that His underlying motive is love. You can't be anything but. Everyone ever born will eventually return to Him. Some come early, some come late. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 22 to 24, but all come. 5. How shall God be judging the world? 3:6. Exactly. Begin thinking of judgment as corrective rather than simply bad. God's judging is ultimately
corrective and therefore good. I can say this without watering it down. I'm not saying that judgment is not scary, it's just not crazy. When a judge awards someone a $1 million settlement in court, that's a judgment, isn't it? When a judge sends someone to prison temporarily to adjust their behavior, this is also a judgment, but a negative one. Both the positive and the negative judgment, even among humans, ideally lead to good. The court hopes to reform the criminal. The murderer needs to be broken harder than the double parker. I know it doesn't often work, but with God, it always works. God gives us times of rain and gloom, does He not? He disciplines us as sons and daughters. These times are necessary to humble us and prepare us for the sunshine and happiness of future days. Since you realize He does these things for you, for your ultimate benefit, why rob Him of doing it for other people later on in His program? So what if He has to lean harder on these vessels of dishonor than He does with you? What would you expect? The only reason... Where was I?
Catherine, stop scrolling.
The only reason you get off easy is because you are a vessel of honor, and they are not. The only difference between you and them is that God chose you now, but will not give them life until later. We will review all of this when we get to Romans chapter 9. Please do not apply your standards of fair and not fair to God. God is not you, and vice versa. This revelation may shock some who may happen upon this writing. I am sorry to ruin everyone's day. Better for me to ruin it now than for God to ruin it later. Being delivered of godhood should come as a great relief. Realizing one's habitants and creatureville removes pressure not meant to rid upon human shoulders. Some people may actually be able to dance again. The judgments of God are good. If he can't righteously judge people whom he makes either hard or soft, he can't judge anyone, because he makes everyone either hard or soft. Read that previous sentence repeatedly if you would. It is one of the most sensible, most compact, and most understandable sentences I've ever written.
6. If the truth of God superabounds in my life for his glory, why am I also still being judged as a sinner? Chapter 3, verse 7. Paul is merely taking the principle explained above, which applies to all humanity, and applying it personally to his tradespeople. I don't think that when Paul says, why am I also being judged as a sinner, he is speaking literally of himself, that is, in his present condition as a writer of the epistle. Members of Christ's body do not come into judgment. Rather, Paul refers to his previous life when he walked the ranks and the files of the disobedient nation. God judges Israel and the individuals thereof to bring them to glory eventually. We will see this in detail in Romans chapter 11. God is a very successful God. No, it doesn't say that. I just felt like saying that. 7. Why not say we should be doing evil that good may be coming? Chapter 3, verse 8. Keep in mind Paul's major premise: our injustice is commanded in God's righteousness. Romans chapter 3, verse 5. This is the most amazing premise. It aligns with Romans chapter 5, verse 20, where sin increases, grace super exceeds. Rather than frustrating God's plans, human injustice actually commends them. God's plans cannot be either fully implemented or appreciated without the necessary backdrop of human injustice. That the objection we should be doing evil that good may be becoming, coming is even stated proves that the objector has at least grasped Paul's point that good results from every evil. Evil provides the necessary backdrop for the coming good. With good at last displayed, evil is abolished. Oh, it stopped. The last enemy being abolished is death. Everything okay there? Okay. With good at last displayed, evil is abolished. The last enemy being abolished is death. 1 Corinthians 15:26. It stands to reason, only to reasonable people, that if the last enemy is eventually abolished, all previous enemies will have gone before. The biggest enemy besides death, every other evil. Concerning any who could promote such a principle as enacting evil to produce good, Paul says his judgment is fair. Romans 3:8. Anyone suggesting such a course surely does not actually follow the course. It is merely an argument aimed at derailing Paul's point and disqualifying his truth. Paul says, if in order to derail a tenet of God that offends you, you would be so petty as to insist upon that which you would never do, you deserve whatever divine judgment relieves you of your stubbornness. Liam.
Here we go. Question 8. Are we privileged? In 3:9. Paul speaks of the Jews here, and his answer is undoubtedly not. This is a different question than in 3:1, when Paul asks, what is the prerogative of the Jew? And the answer is much in every manner. Prerogative in the Greek is, whatever that is, means excessive. In other words, what excessive gifts and blessings have the Jews? The answer is many. Here in 3:9, the question is of privilege. That is, when it comes to subjection to the righteous judgment of God, is the Jew advantaged over a man or woman of the nations? Here's the answer. Undoubtedly not, for we previously charged both Jews and Greek to all be under sin, Romans 3:9. Just how much under sin we all are, and how much we need the blessed solution of Romans 3:21 will be disclosed next week.
I want to stop it and just for a sec and see what's going on in the side chat there. Hello to the people in the side chat. We've got Paula.
And Sterling.
And Sterling. Hello. And relax, guys. Relax.
Yeah, relax and get a book with some leaves on it. Put some leaves on a book.
That's what you do every day.
Why not? It is autumn. Well, here it is. So you might as well grab some leaves and get some string and wrap it onto those books.
Yes, indeed. All right.
Relax.
Yes. Are you ready to read the second one?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's read the second one.
Okay. Oops. Just make it bigger. You can see that all right. All good? Okay. Hang on, I gotta change it. I forget these things sometimes. All right. Romans part 22. Did you want to start off this time?
Yeah, I'll start off this time. Why not? Throat. I think that's you need to scroll down a little bit.
Yeah, you got to read the chapter 3, verse 10 to 20.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was like, why is it starting off with the word throat? That's such a weird way to start it off. Okay. Romans part 22, chapter 3, verse 10 to 20. According as it is written, that not one is just, not even one. Not one is understanding. No one is seeking out God. All avoid him. At the same time, they were useless. Not one is doing kindness. There is not even one. A sepulchre opened is there.
Throat. With their tongues they defraud, the venom of asps is under their lips, whose mouth with imprecation and bitterness is crammed. Sharp are their feet to shed blood. Bruises of wretchedness are in their ways, and the way of peace they do not know. There is no fear of God in front of their eyes. Now we are aware that whatever the law is saying, it is speaking to those under the law, that every mouth may be barred, and the entire world may become subject to the just verdict of God, because by works of law no flesh at all shall be justified in his sight. For through law is the recognition of sin. In Romans chapter 1, verse 18, and that chapter 3, verse 20 to chapter 3, verse 20, we are silenced by our own failings as we move toward a great symphony announcing the accomplishment of God. Before dawn comes the deepest, darkest night. In Romans, the deepest, darkest night occurs between chapter 3, verse 10 to 20. It never gets darker than this. It is the utter silence of human failure before the opening strain of what Christ has done for us. Not one is just, not even one. This is absolute truth. A person may be said to be just in relation to other sinning human beings, but here the standard is God. The standard is his righteousness. Before the righteousness of God, no one can stand. No one is right. Just means right. The gulf between humanity and God is greater than the gulf between the farthest galaxies of the universe. Span it on a tricycle, for that would be easier. In comparison to him, we are impossibly wrong. Christ is the bridge between God and humanity. Jesus Christ did everything right. This is good news for us as we identify ourselves with Christ. God already does it, identifies us with Christ, so we may as well join him. It's the only escape chute out of despair. If you are despairing, Romans is the answer.
Romans first paints the despair, but don't stop there. Anticipate the escape chute it deploys in chapter 3:21. No one is understanding. Jesus' disciples looked at him some days as though he was crazy. No one is understanding. Human judgment is false. Israel looked at Saul and wanted him for a king because he was good looking and tall. Not one is understanding. Jesus Christ was disrespected as a person because he was ugly and from Nazareth. No one is understanding. Humans think they can impress the deity by going to church, giving up candy for Lent, and trying to behave themselves. Not one is understanding. Clergy of every era imagine themselves geniuses because they confer degrees upon one another from schools of their own invention. Not one is understanding. Humanity believes that it can act independently of God or free will. Not one is understanding. We look up into heaven and God seems so far away. Not one is understanding. Any human being who at last grasps God does so by an act of the very being he grasps. It is the only escape from ignorance, left to itself. Not one of humanity is understanding. No, not even us. The only reason we now understand is because God gave us faith and wisdom. Apart from God giving, nothing comes. Wait until your hair falls out. It won't come. You might as well expect flowers to sprout from a rock. Stand, stare at the rock, scream at it, challenge it, preach at hellfire. Nothing will happen. Apart from God's purposeful breath, we all stare into space like dumb sheep. Yes, even us. Not one is understanding. Not one is seeking out God. We seek our own survival. We seek food, water, love. We seek for ourselves. Anything we seek outwards is ultimately for the inwards. We are black holes of consumption. Nothing can go outward and stay there unless God puts his love in our hearts for him and for others. God must plant his love into us before it can flower. Love is the first fruit of the Spirit, Galatians 5:22. Spirit must be given, thus also love. We haven't this resource natively within us. The love of God has been poured out in our hearts through the Holy Spirit, which has been given to us, Romans 5:5. Notice the active verbs 1, poured, and 2, given. Noticing these will change the way you think about your contribution to God.
Oh, what have we got here? Picture. King Saul. Ooh. Oh, is it ooh or oh? A man seeks God after being saved, not before. Before it is literally impossible to seek God. I believe Romans chapter 3, verse 11. Humanity, on the other hand, claims to seek God apart from God. This is a euphemism for human free will. Satan convinces people that they can give God that which he has yet to possess. This is the ultimate deception. It is a satanic... do you say that as coup? I don't know.
Yes, it's a satanic coup.
Yeah, disbelief. How does humanity call upon God? Only an act of God causes a person to call upon God. God initiates the faith which we eventually return to him and call our faith. It is ours only in a relative sense. No faith dwells within us. Human beings cannot generate such an amazing commodity. No receptacle or storage place exists in the human, in the soul, in the heart, or in the spirit, from which the stuff can be drawn. How can it be drawn when it is not there? Martin Luther one day realized this. He graduated from seminary without having learned it. Hallowed halls of learning failed him miserably in the department of faith. Because of former religious learning, Luther sought something inside him that did not exist. But Luther would
answer God's bell. His instructions told him to listen and act. When nothing surfaced, he despaired. Then Luther realized that not finding anything was the great answer he'd been straining for. He then realized that the human was so void of presence for the deity that everything was a present from his hand instead, right down to the faith necessary for salvation. It was this section of Romans that finally convinced Luther of his empty hand. Luther got this key on the toilet. The German reformer was famously constipated. A toilet serves well for both revelations and for battling constipations. Luther always suspected his helplessness, but now here it was in his face. Though he still could not properly process bratwurst. I have no idea what that is, but it sounds good.
It's like a sausage thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Romans 3:10-20 did it to and for him. It was the beginning of Luther grasping human insufficiency and the true importance of Christ. Christianity remains ignorant of this. They think that God stands them at home plate. They think that God stands them at home plate and they are able to hit at any pitch. Christians generate their own faith, they think, miraculously offering it to God as though God was in need of it. In their minds, God sits passively in the stands waiting for them to smack a home run. The religious fail to realize the simple truth that all is of God. 2 Corinthians 5:18. It is too simple. Everything they have, even their faith, lands unexpectedly upon them. Faith is God's gift to them, not theirs to him. Misapprehending this, the Christians necessarily insult the giver. If they are giving to him, he cannot at the same time be giving to them. If he does the giving, however, then humanity cannot be exercising a freedom of will. Free wills cannot, by definition, be acted upon from without. Otherwise, they would not be free. To insist upon human free will is to deny divine activity. Christianity wrote Romans 3:10-20, and then promptly believes the opposite. They stare at the verse, then deny it. They think they seek God. The verse says they don't, but they say they do. What a master deceiver Satan is. He's the father of lies and the prince of making lies look good. Scripture says not one is seeking out God. And Satan says, if you are a wise person, you can seek out God. God expects you to seek him. Christianity believes Satan rather than God. I thank God he has spared me this deadly snare.
Mm. All avoid him. Not only do human beings not seek God, they actively avoid him. In Jesus' day, people crossed the street to keep from encountering him. Please don't disturb us, God. We want to eat, to drink. We want to eat, to drink, to procreate, to sleep, to take our leisure. If we happen to see you out of the corner of our eye, we know that you will somehow disturb us and our happy luncheon will be spoiled. We have a feeling that you will require something of us. Our waters seek their own level. They seek to be still. We want only to stay inside of ourselves. Comfort zones are happy homes. You discipline, and that hurts. These are such things as growing pains, so let's not grow, please. If given the choice, we, like Israel, choose to remain in Egypt. The reliability of prison is easier than faith strained in the wilderness. There, we must trust your invisibility. We would rather stay jailed than rise without the bars and risk the unknown. Ignorance is a life of sweet somnolence. Somnolence. Wisdom, on the other hand, beckons and then leads as a small light into scary-looking darkness. Ignorance truly is bliss. It is favored by those whose only desire is fun and a lack of care. A former acquaintance once said to me, "I just want a fun, carefree life." This occurred at a Starbucks. Fine, then don't know anything. Never try to solve your problems. Nothing could be less stressful than pure ignorance. The best way to attain such a dubious vacancy, a fun, carefree life, is to avoid God. Here is how you do it. Drown out the still, small voice. Wisdom sits alone on a plain table, void of cloth napkins, void of cutlery, void of candles, void of ceramic angels, void of happy scents, void of even visible food. Yet here's the tastiest banquet available. Such a sensually dull table is easily passed, however. We quickly sidestep it, turning a blind eye. We seek more appealing presentations, a beer, a good night's sleep, a hot meal, a sexual encounter. The still small voice can be drowned and stepped around. It is not called still and small for nothing. Just turn up the noises of life. I used to tell my sons that my solution to disturbing engine noises from my car was to turn up the radio. Stay busy, keep the radio, and
Keep the radio and television on. Check your email again. See who has new postings on Facebook. Play video games, because that's what these games are for. The avoidance of reality. That's so true. We prefer our own vomit, because we know it. If anyone, even once, deviates from the above course, it is an act of God. God must violate the vaunted human will, supposed to be free, for anyone to change. Since human free will is a myth, however, then God in reality violates nothing. How can he jump a fence when no fence exists? Thus, God merely replaces human ignorance with light. He removes blinders. He does this whenever he wants. Since there are no actual walls, it's no big deal to him. The incursion of God against human ignorance is simply and merely a matter of timing, as in when is he going to do it next and for whom? At the same time, they were useless. Paul told the
Epicurean.
Paul told the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers on Mars Hill, the God who makes the world and all that is in it, he, the Lord inherit of heaven and earth, is not dwelling in temples made by hands. Neither is he attendant by human hands, as if requiring anything, since he himself gives to all life and breath, and all humans. Okay, so humans are so useless that they refuse to believe verses describing their uselessness. The first thing they refuse to believe is that God does not dwell in temples made by hands. The nuns used to tell me that Jesus lived in the little gold box on the altar. I banged on the thing later, but no one answered.
God is inherent of heaven and earth. He is everywhere. He used to condescend to manifest a token of his presence in the holy place of Israel's temple, but those days are gone. Now God's Spirit dwells within humans of his choosing. Are you not aware that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit in you, which you have from God, and you are not your own? 1 Corinthians 6:19. Elvis has left the building, and so has God. Useless. Neither is he attended by human hands, as if requiring anything. Do we really think that God needs stuff from us? No thinking could be more juvenile. I like Paul's use of as if. I'm hearing it in my mind as modern teenagers say it as if. Yeah, I know grown people who think this way. They actually believe that God needs stuff from us as if he lacks something that only we can give, as if our wanted independence delights him. They are going to lord God with shiny trinkets missing from his curio shelf. They shall render unto him an idea he has yet to entertain. God will be so surprised, so happy, so full. Let us prepare for him a luscious meal of untasted delights. Let us listen for him to expel the air of satisfaction from his gorgeous lips, for surely he will. Now, perhaps, he will smoke a pipe and contemplate all that we have done for him. He will laud the amazing giver to his attending angels, saying, "Look what I have received from Martin
Zender. He has given me the gift of faith. I did not think the man had it within him. But look, see how he has produced it from deep within himself. He pulled it from the well. I shall press this man's faith into my holy scrapbook, next to the three-leaf clover, illustrating the Trinity, and think fondly of it. When e'er I care to caress it. And now look, Martin Zender is dressing some gold, frankincense, myrrh, and Cuban cigars. I am feeling pacified toward Martin because of these gifts. Do we have any of these kind of cigars? No. We have only the Honduran variety? Did we even realize that the Cubans made cigars? Then splendid. How this escaped us these many years. I am not aware. Please send Martin Zender a card of thanks, as he has added to our knowledge of the human condition, as well as the tobacco habits of Cuban farmers. Let us promote this man to regular correspondent. Gabriel, procure his telephone number.
Right. Whenever God presents himself as requiring things, it is the relative viewpoint. Absolutely speaking, he needs nothing. He condescends to need things to help us work. If we think he actually needs them, we have reduced him to our own level and simultaneously denied Romans chapter 3 verse 12. At the same time, they were useless. Absolutely. God does not need us. He chooses to need us so that we may need him in return and find our all in him. He appears to the young by presenting himself as a God who can be, assuaged. Do you know that word, Lim?
No idea.
And informed.
Assuaged.
I'll just say it like that. I liken this sort of condescension to a parent goo-gooing a baby. The language is not real, it's not inherently the adult's, but it is put on for the baby's sake. Once the baby attains maturity, the parent speaks in his natural voice. Thus God speaks to us. When we are ready, we hear him as he really is. He does everything. He knows everything. Everything is already his. The world's course is predetermined. He is the sovereign of the universe. We are useless, except that he loves us extravagantly and gives his only begotten Son for our sakes. He does everything for us. This is his inherent voice. Hear it. There is more, but this is enough humiliation for one day. May it liberate you. Stay seated upon your throne of porcelain, where humiliations come easily. Grasp fully your creaturehood. Deliverance will come. God is about to rescue us all, Jew and Greek, from despair. A few more somber sips from the cup of humanity remain, however. I want us to drink whatever God gives. Let us taste bitterness to the dregs, that we may more deeply appreciate the coming sweetness. Ooh. Cute.
They gave me some ideas. I took some stuff from that.
Say again?
That's going to help me with my videos on free will.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
Whenever
good.
I start to make those videos.
Uh-huh. If anybody wants to come into the after chat for a little bit, click on the StreamYard link. I'm going to put it up there. Paula says she has to go to bed.
Good night, Paula. Love, grace, and peace, sister. Good night.
Yeah.
I think you already went to bed, but good night, Paula.
Yeah, probably. It's pretty late over there, so... Yeah, cool. So it seems to be doing that, reading these. It gives you ideas, Liam. That happened another
give me
time.
ideas. Yeah. It keeps giving me new ideas and points.
God keeps giving you new ideas. Not
Yep.
you giving yourself ideas.
No, I don't come up with the ideas. No, I just get given them.
Yep.
Just like faith.
What's that?
Just like faith.
Yeah, being given it rather than working yourself up for your own faith.
To be like
doesn't
a
work like that.
Pentecostal. Be like, ha, 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 ha. Just start
Is
dancing.
that what they do?
Yeah, a Pentecostal, basically, they're all about the worship, but it's like loud and bombastic. Like scream, hallelujah, praise the Lord.
Unfortunately, I have to say that I've been in a Pentecostal church more than once.
Oh. That's interesting.
In my Christian past, before I was a believer, yeah.
And what was your experience within this church?
It was pretty normal, really. There weren't too many weird things going on when I was there, so that was okay then. Anyway, shall we wrap it up?
Yeah, sure. That's us read 2 episodes, or not 2 episodes, 2 volumes today. And they were pretty good, and they gave me some points that I can make in future stuff, so that's great. That's why I love to read stuff.
You can go to martinzender.com and go down to ZWTF, and there's a whole heap of articles there that you can see. That's where I got them from. So, yep. All right, everyone. Love, grace, and peace.
Love, grace, and peace to everyone watching. Love, grace, and peace to all you guys.
Thanks for tuning in.
We'll be out here soon. I hope so.
All right.
Let's get out of here.
Let's go. Oh, to the Celestials or off live?
I'm going to go to bed, but let's go to the Celestials soon.
Okay. See you, everyone.